Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
Could you please state your full name?
I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands.
Do you maintain any other residences presently?
I have vacation homes in New Mexico, Palm Beach, New York, and Paris.
When Jeffrey Epstein died, he left behind a $577 million estate, 43 separate bank accounts across multiple countries, properties worth nearly $200 million. But here's the thing nobody talks about. He had zero documented business model, no employees, no products, no services anyone can actually identify. So where did the money actually come from? And more importantly, who's asking that question now? Hit subscribe if you want to follow money trails that powerful people hoped would stay buried forever, because what we found will change how you see wealth and power in America. Let's follow the money. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't born into money. He grew up in a middle-class family in Brooklyn, in Coney Island. His father sold costume jewelry and worked part-time as a groundskeeper. Nothing about his childhood screamed future billionaire. He dropped out of college twice, New York University, then Cooper Union. No degree, no family connections, no trust fund. So what did he do? He became a high school math teacher at the Dalton School in Manhattan. 20 years old, teaching calculus to teenagers for $4,500 a year. But here's where the story gets interesting. Somehow, this college dropout math teacher caught the attention of Bear Stearns, one of Wall Street's most prestigious investment banks. They hired him in 1976. How does that happen? Bear Stearns doesn't exactly recruit from high school faculty lounges, but it gets stranger. Epstein wasn't just hired, he was fast-tracked. Within 4 years, he was promoted to limited partner. That's almost unheard of at a major investment bank. Then in 1981, he was suddenly fired. The official reason, a violation of Regulation D securities law. But here's what's odd. No one will say what he actually did. No charges were filed, no public record, just gone. Most people fired from Wall Street for regulatory violations don't bounce back. Epstein did more than bounce back. He started his own company, J. Epstein and Company, founded in 1982, and this is where things get truly bizarre. The company claimed to manage money exclusively for billionaires. Minimum investment, $1 billion. That's not a typo, 1 billion. But who were these billionaire clients? Nobody knows. The company had no visible employees, no marketing materials, no SEC filings, no audited financial statements. Think about that for a moment. Every legitimate investment firm in America has to file detailed reports with regulators. They have compliance officers, auditors, documented investment strategies. J. Epstein and Company had none of this. No paper trail, no oversight, no explanation of how they made money or who they made it for. So if he wasn't making money the normal way, how was he making it? The answer might lie with one man, Les Wexner. Wexner built a retail empire. Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie, and Fitch, the Limited. By the 1980s, he was worth billions. And in 1987, Wexner did something unprecedented. He gave Jeffrey Epstein full power of attorney over his finances. Let that sink in. Complete control. Epstein could buy, sell, transfer, and manage every dollar Wexner owned. No oversight, no approval needed. Billionaires don't do this, ever. They have teams of lawyers, accountants, trustees. They don't hand over their entire fortune to one person. But Wexner did, and then things got very expensive. In 1996, Wexner bought a mansion in Manhattan, Upper East Side, $77 million, the largest private residence in New York City. But here's the twist. Epstein lived there, not Wexner. Then in 2011, Wexner transferred the deed to Epstein for free, $46 million, just gifted. Wexner later claimed he was unaware of the transfer, said Epstein had misappropriated his money. So was it a gift, or was it theft? But Wexner wasn't Epstein's only cash cow. Leon Black, billionaire private equity king, paid Epstein $158 million between 2000 and 2017. For what? Consulting services. What kind of consulting is worth $158 million? From someone with no documented expertise? Even Bill Gates met with Epstein repeatedly after his conviction. Gates' foundation gave millions to Epstein-connected organizations. The money kept flowing from everywhere, and Epstein spent it like a man building an empire. The Manhattan Mansion, $77 million. Little St. James Island in the Virgin Islands, $63 million. Plus $29 million in renovations. The Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, $18 million. A Paris apartment, $12 million. The Palm Beach estate, $12 million. $179 million in real estate alone. But the property portfolio was just the surface. Underneath it all was a financial web that would make offshore experts dizzy. 43 bank accounts across multiple countries: Switzerland, Austria, the Virgin Islands, shell companies with names like Southern Trust Company and Gratitude America Limited. Offshore trusts buried in jurisdictions where financial privacy is sacred. Money moving through structures so complex that even after his death, investigators are still trying to map it all. And here's perhaps the strangest part of all. While Epstein was building this financial empire, while he was a registered sex offender, while rumors swirled about his activities, he was simultaneously donating millions to some of America's most prestigious institutions. Harvard received over $9 million. MIT got nearly $8 million. He funded research labs, endowed chairs, threw lavish parties for Nobel Prize winners. These institutions took his money and gave him legitimacy in return. They put his name on buildings. They invited him to exclusive academic conferences. A registered sex offender was buying respectability from Harvard and MIT. So the question isn't just how he got the money, it's how he kept it flowing while living such a public double life. What did Jeffrey Epstein know that made him untouchable?
He showed you cameras throughout the house.
The main thing he did when I walked in, I thought was interesting, he showed me where the men monitoring everything were. So if you're facing the house, there's a window on the right that's barred. That's the room, the media room is what he called it. Yeah. And so there was a door that looked like an invisible door with all this limestone and everything, and you push it and you go in. And I saw all the cameras.
There's a theory that explains everything. The money, the protection, the impossible connections. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just collecting wealth, he was collecting secrets. Every property Epstein owned had one thing in common: sophisticated surveillance systems. The Manhattan Mansion had cameras everywhere: bedrooms, bathrooms, living areas, places where guests would expect privacy. Little St. James Island was wired like a recording studio. Multiple witnesses described seeing cameras hidden throughout the compound. Maria Farmer, one of Epstein's accusers, testified about a room she called the media room at his New Mexico ranch. Banks of monitors, recording equipment, what appeared to be a massive video archive. This wasn't casual security footage, this was systematic documentation. Here's how a blackmail operation works. You identify powerful people with reputations to protect: politicians, business leaders, academics, celebrities, people who have everything to lose. Then, you create opportunities for them to compromise themselves: exclusive parties, private jets, islands where normal rules don't apply. And you document everything, every conversation, every interaction, every moment of weakness. And then, you own them. Think about it. How else do you explain Leon Black paying $158 million for consulting? To someone with no documented expertise? What service could possibly be worth that much? How do you explain Bill Gates continuing to meet with Epstein after his conviction, despite his advisors warning against it? How do you explain Prince Andrew's association? Lasting decades, through multiple scandals, the FBI seized massive amounts of video footage and documents from Epstein's properties, hundreds of hours of recordings, thousands of photographs. Almost none of it has ever been made public. Why would the FBI hide evidence unless it implicated people they couldn't afford to expose? Maria Farmer described seeing politicians, business leaders, and celebrities on the island who had no business being there, and she saw them being recorded without their knowledge. Epstein didn't host parties, he hosted auditions for blackmail material. This theory explains his legal immunity. In 2008, when federal prosecutors had him dead to rights on trafficking charges, he received the most lenient plea deal in modern history, 13 months in a county jail, allowed to leave 12 hours a day for work release, and immunity for any co-conspirators. The prosecutor who approved that deal, Alexander Acosta. Years later, when asked about it, Acosta said something revealing. "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." Intelligence? Whose intelligence? Some investigators believe Epstein was connected to foreign intelligence services, the Mossad, Russian oligarchs, powerful interests who needed leverage over American leaders. But here's what we know for certain. Epstein operated with impunity for decades. He accumulated massive wealth with no visible means. He maintained relationships with the world's most powerful people. Despite being a convicted sex offender, the blackmail theory isn't just speculation, it's the only explanation that fits the evidence. If you can compromise the right people, you don't need a business model. You don't need legitimate income streams, you just need secrets. And Jeffrey Epstein had plenty of those.
Donald Trump's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993 was a grand affair at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. The guest list was a who's who of the rich and famous, and among them was none other than Jeffrey Epstein. There he is, in a newly unearthed photo.
To understand how deep this went, you need to see the network that surrounded Jeffrey Epstein. These weren't casual acquaintances, these were sustained relationships with some of the most powerful people on earth. Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, flew on Epstein's private jet multiple times, stayed at his properties, continued the relationship even after Epstein's conviction. When asked about it, Andrew claimed he stayed friends because Epstein's parties were useful for meeting people. Bill Clinton. Flight logs show Clinton took at least 26 trips on Epstein's jet between 2001 and 2003. Secret Service records are mysteriously incomplete for several of those flights. Bill Gates. Despite his advisors warning against it, Gates met with Epstein numerous times after his conviction. When pressed about it, Gates said he regretted the relationship, but never explained why he pursued it in the first place. Donald Trump. Before his presidency, Trump was photographed at Epstein parties. In the 2002 interview, he called Epstein a terrific guy, said Epstein likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. These weren't people who stumbled into Epstein's orbit by accident. They actively maintained relationships with a known sex offender for years. Why? The answer might lie in what happened in 2008. Federal prosecutors had built an airtight case against Epstein. They had victims, they had evidence, they had witnesses ready to testify. The charges should have meant life in prison, serial trafficking of minors across state lines, operating a criminal enterprise, conspiracy. Instead, Epstein got 13 months in a county jail with work release privileges. 13 months for crimes that usually carry decades. The plea agreement was so unusual, a federal judge later ruled it violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act because prosecutors never informed the victims before making the deal. But here's the crucial part. The agreement included immunity for all of Epstein's co-conspirators, all of them. Everyone who participated in or enabled his operation was protected. Their names were sealed, their crimes were buried. This wasn't just about protecting Epstein, this was about protecting a network. How do you get that kind of deal? You have leverage, the same leverage that kept the money flowing, the same leverage that kept powerful people taking his calls, the same leverage that bought silence from victims for years. Epstein's wealth wasn't just about luxury, it was about infrastructure. Legal teams that could tie up cases for decades, private investigators who could intimidate witnesses, non-disclosure agreements backed by millions in penalties. He created a system where speaking out against him was more dangerous than staying quiet. But the most telling moment came in August 2019.
Some other news we're following tonight. Billionaire Jeffrey Epstein is expected to appear in federal court in Lower Manhattan tomorrow following new charges related to alleged sex crimes involving minors.
Epstein was finally arrested on federal charges. This time, there would be no sweetheart deal. The evidence was overwhelming. The public pressure was enormous. For the first time in decades, Jeffrey Epstein was truly cornered. And then, conveniently, he died. Official cause, suicide by hanging. But the circumstances were so suspicious, even the coroner had doubts. The cameras outside his cell malfunctioned. Both guards fell asleep at the same time. His cellmate was transferred just hours before. The autopsy showed injuries more consistent with strangulation than hanging. Whether it was suicide or murder, the timing was perfect. Perfect for everyone except Epstein. His death ensured that the network he'd built, the secrets he'd collected, the powerful people he'd compromised, all of it stayed buried. The only person who could expose the full scope of the operation was gone. And with him went the answers to questions that might have brought down governments. But Epstein's death didn't end the story. It just made it more complicated. What happened to the money? Just 2 days before his arrest, Epstein moved his entire fortune into a trust, the 1953 trust, named after the year of his birth. $577 million vanished into a legal structure designed to hide its beneficiaries. Who controls it? Nobody knows. The trustees are shell companies incorporated in tax havens. The beneficiaries are sealed. The purpose? Undefined. It's the perfect financial disappearing act. Meanwhile, the victims got scraps. A compensation fund was established. $125 million, less than a quarter of his known wealth. And even that came with conditions. Take the money and waive your right to sue anyone else who might have been involved. At the same time, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's alleged partner and recruiter, finally went on trial in 2021. Everyone expected revelations, names, financial records, details about the operation. Instead, Maxwell stayed silent. The trial focused on her personal guilt, not the broader network. No clients were named. No financial records were revealed. The money trail remained buried. She was sentenced to 20 years, but the secrets went with her to prison. And today, in 2025, the mystery still persists. Hundreds of documents remain sealed by court order. Multiple lawsuits are still working their way through the system. Victims' lawyers are still trying to pierce the trust structure. The FBI still holds thousands of hours of video footage and photographs seized from Epstein's properties. Almost none of it has ever been made public. The 1953 trust still controls hundreds of millions of dollars. Its beneficiaries remain unknown, and the powerful people who flew on his jets, attended his parties, took his money, most of them have moved on with their lives, their secrets intact. Jeffrey Epstein is gone, but his greatest creation lives on. A system where money, power, and secrets created perfect protection for those at the top. The fortune tells a story. We're just not allowed to read it. After following the money, after mapping the connections, after examining the evidence, we're left with the most important question of all. Was Jeffrey Epstein the mastermind, or was he the frontman? Think about it. A college dropout math teacher doesn't typically build a billion-dollar blackmail operation on his own. He doesn't develop the sophisticated financial structures to hide it. He doesn't create the international network to protect it. Someone taught him, someone funded him, someone protected him. But who? We still don't know Epstein's true net worth. That $577 million? That was just what investigators could find. How much is hidden in structures they haven't uncovered? We don't know who benefits from the 1953 trust. Hundreds of millions sitting in legal limbo, controlled by shadows. We don't know if the operation continued after his death. Are there other Epsteins out there, running similar schemes with different faces? But here's what we do know. For decades, the most powerful people in the world protected a sex trafficker because he had something on them. Presidents, princes, billionaires, they took his calls, they attended his parties, they stayed in his orbit even after his crimes were public knowledge. And that tells us something terrifying about how power really works. It tells us that at the highest levels of society, there are systems we're not supposed to see, networks that operate outside the law, protection mechanisms that shield the wealthy and powerful from consequences. Jeffrey Epstein didn't create this system, he just figured out how to use it. His real genius wasn't making money, it was understanding that in a world built on secrets, the person who collects them becomes untouchable, even in death, even with his crimes exposed. The network he built remains largely intact. The secrets he gathered are still buried. The people he compromised are still protected. In a world where money talks, Jeffrey Epstein's silence still screams the loudest. What do you think? Was Epstein working alone, or was he part of something bigger? Let me know in the comments. If this investigation opened your eyes to how wealth and power really operate, hit that like button, share this video. The more people who understand these connections, the harder it becomes to hide them. Follow the money, ask your own questions, because the biggest mystery isn't what Jeffrey Epstein did with his fortune, it's what his fortune is still doing without him.